ladies and gentlemen, excellencies, distinguished guests. Good morning and welcome. Our first session of the day explores a defining question of the time: reimagining multilateralism in an interconnected yet divided world. To lead us through these discussions, we are honored to have with us an exceptional voice in global development. Please join me in welcoming Her Excellency Bérangère Bouel, United Nations Resident Coordinator in the United Arab Emirates. Your Excellency, the floor is yours.
So people have to put the, okay. I don't. Sabah al khair. Very good afternoon to everybody. My apologies for the delay. I had the great honor to be with Her Highness Sheikh Al Latifa and Her Excellency Rebecca Greenspan. Very two inspiring ladies and you know, very much in the spirit of sharing knowledge for the benefits of all. But my sincere apologies for making you wait. I think you've been told that the best way to hear my intervention is to use the headphone that you have. So my name is Bérangère Bouel. I'm the UN resident coordinator in the UAE, and I have the extreme honor of representing the UN Secretary General in the beautiful country of the United Arab Emirates. Allow me to begin by thanking warmly UNDP and the Mohammed bin Rashid Al Maktoum Knowledge Foundation for convening this 10th Knowledge Summit, a decade of learning, sharing, and engagement around the forces shaping our world. And allow me to begin with a personal experience that really, for me, has been the expression of what is the purpose of multilateralism. So I will bring you to Mozambique, the northern part of Mozambique, in Cabo Delgado, with the capital of the province called Pemba, that I visited in 2022 when I was still based there. The north of Mozambique has been the theater of non-state armed groups attacking population that has led to the displacement of more than 1 million people. And I visited in a site of internally displaced people, and I met with this young woman. She was only 20. She was with a toddler, pregnant, and she was, you know, telling me how was the experience for her of walking for over a day as she was fleeing her village. And it was a really tragic event. She had lost her husband, and she was really feeling complete despair. But at this moment that, you know, there was this tragedy unfolding, this woman was not alone. And it was not alone because there was one organization, but because there was a whole system around her. There were more than 50 entities present, UN agencies, international NGOs, local partner, the whole architecture of the collective effort for supporting the national authorities and the people mostly affected. So we could deliver food, water, healthcare, protection, shelter, and support for survivors of violence. The humanitarian coordinator at the time, she was supported by OCHA and guided by the humanitarian country team for providing this emergency response to the affected population. While this was happening in the north of Mozambique, at the same time, development partners, under the leadership of the resident coordinator, with the UN country team, they were helping the country to restore basic services, to support the local administrators, to strengthen resilience and align assistance with the national priorities and the cooperation framework that was established between the UN and Mozambique. Also, international financial institutions like the World Bank Group, IMF, they were working with the government on crucial economic reforms to stabilize the fiscal environment and strengthen social protection. And just to add to this overall picture, the country Mozambique has actually been also the theater of internal tensions. And that same year, there was an agreement that took place under the auspices of the UN for the disarmament and disengagement of former combatants. So when we actually look at the scenario of Mozambique, it remains fragile and displacement continues. But that day, when I was meeting this young woman, I knew also that she was not alone, and she knew she was not alone, more importantly, because around her stood a network of institutions, communities and partners, each addressing a different dimension of her crisis: humanitarian, development, financial, and peace building. So this is multilateralism in practice. Not the illusion of fast solutions, but the certainty that people will not be abandoned when crises strike. Now allow me to bring you a bit back in time. From Mozambique 2022, let's go to San Francisco in the United States in June 1945. In that same city, 51 nations at the time came together around the conviction that peace, dignity, and development must be pursued collectively. Now there's 193 member states, and as you know, we were actually discussing it a few minutes ago with Her Highness Sheikha Latifa and Her Excellency Rebecca Greenspan. This is also due to the mutation of the overall environment in the last 80 years. There has been decolonization, and the world at the time was half of the world population that it is today. So the spirit of San Francisco and the 51 nations that came together creating multilateralism and signing the charter, the UN Charter, was not abstract. Multilateralism is not abstract. It emerged from the devastation of war, from a recognition that survival required cooperation, justice, and opportunity. But the institutions built in 1945, they reflect the world of 1945, not the world of 2025. Today, we face converging forces, climate disruption, geopolitical fractures, pandemics, and technologies evolving faster than governance. We rely more than ever on multilateral institutions, even as they struggle to respond. And the results are clear. Only 17% of the Sustainable Development Goals are on track. And the deadline is in 5 years for us to achieve the remaining 83%. We also see that humanitarian needs are rising while funding declines. Today, 300 million people are in need of humanitarian assistance. And at the same time, climate impacts affect more than 1.7 billion people. The displacement of people has reached over 100 million persons, and conflicts are at their highest level since the Second World War. All with this, trust in institutions, in governments, in international cooperation is eroding. These pressures do not mean that multilateralism has failed. They mean multilateralism must adapt with urgency and clarity. The new agenda for peace, which is part of the common agenda of 2023 from the UN Secretary General adopted by all member states, remind us that prevention must be a political priority. Diplomacy, the driving force of global cooperation, and responses must engage all of society, because today's risks do not respect borders. At the same time, member states have shown that renewal is possible. The Pact for the Future that was adopted in September 2024 at the summit having the same name, Summit of the Future, offers a political vision for cooperation in a world shaped by climate disruption, technology, and new forms of insecurity. But political vision requires institutional capacity. This is the purpose of UN 80 reform agenda: to review decades of mandates, to reduce duplication, to strengthen coherence across development, humanitarian, human rights, and peace building, and safeguard delivery in a period of fiscal constraint. So, in a nutshell, the Pact for the Future has set the direction. UN 80 strengthened the ability of the system to act. Now, alongside these reforms, the world has agreed this year on new compacts. The first one, extremely important, the Sevilla Commitment, which was adopted in July this year from the Fourth International Conference on Financing for Development, calls for a financial architecture that responds to today's vulnerabilities, with affordable long-term financing, debt relief, and reformed multilateral development banks. This is something that has been called repeatedly by the UN Secretary General. Without fair access to finances, we cannot sustain development in the countries that need it the most. And most recently, a few days ago, the Doha Political Declaration from the World Summit for Social Development reaffirmed that inclusion, decent work, and social protection are essential foundations for development and stability. And as we all know, we are now also awaiting this week for the conclusion of COP30 in Berlin to actually see also what are the world leaders' decisions for ensuring climate action is taken at the level that is required. Advancing these commitments requires strengthening real economies, more equitable trade, greater productive capacities, diversified economic pathways, and investment that support low carbon, digital, and resilient transitions. Many middle income countries carry significant development responsibility while facing limited fiscal space and heavy debt burdens. We also need implementation, because this is how trust will be restored. Accelerating SDG progress requires integrated national financing frameworks, whole of government planning, good governance, resilient health systems, stronger data ecosystem, and real partnerships with local authorities and communities. And allow me to remember that this year in the UAE is the year of community, so a tribute to the action from the roots. Gender equality must remain central, because progress for women and girls remain one of the most powerful multipliers of sustainable development and social justice. And as conflicts intensify, we must reaffirm protection of civilians, respect for human rights, and the expansion of civic space. We have seen the violation of the international humanitarian law reaching a level that never has been seen before. That impunity has been actually declared as unacceptable, but we actually must see action and a respect of the Geneva Convention. This is part of the multilateralism. The UN development system, anchored in the resident coordinator and informed by what we call UN 2.0, meaning capabilities in data, innovation, foresight, and behavioral science, is supporting countries to translate global commitments into national results. Young people whose futures are shaped by today's decision are too often not at the center of the decision-making of policies. This has to be corrected in order to make sure that sustainable development is ensured and that a brighter future is for all. Here in the UAE, the Knowledge Summit itself reflects a broader national commitment to innovation, inclusion, future readiness, and the strategic use of data and digital systems. The UAE has demonstrated leadership on climate diplomacy, digital transformation, humanitarian logistics, and support to affected communities, as well as future governance. From the UAE consensus at COP28 to its role as host of the UN Water Conference and the UN Crime Congress in 2026, the UAE shows its leadership and support to multilateralism. These contributions do not replace multilateralism, they strengthen it, and we are extremely thankful for it. Looking ahead, 3 shifts in the way we practice multilateralism are essential. First, from power-based cooperation to problem-based cooperation, with nations convening around shared risks, not rivalries. Second, from short-term cycles to long-term responsibility, integrating foresight, future impact assessments, and sustainability into governance, and recognizing climate, digital space, and outer space as global commons that require collective stewardship. Third, from state-centered to society-centered multilateralism, where young people, women's organizations, indigenous people, cities, scientists, workers, philanthropies, and the private sector meaningfully shape global solutions. These shifts do not weaken states. They strengthen their ability to act. Across climate action, digital governance, economic diversification, sustainable finance, and the future of work, opportunities exist today for countries, including in the UAE, to help shape a renewed international cooperation system grounded in responsibility, transparency, inclusion, and shared purpose. Let me conclude. The task ahead is not to defend multilateralism as it once was, but to rebuild it for the world as it is, interconnected, multipolar, technologically driven, and facing risks that no country can manage alone. If we succeed through political will, financial justice, institutional renewal, inclusive development, climate action, digital cooperation, and shared responsibility, then multilateralism can still deliver on the collective commitments made in San Francisco, a United Nations able to protect peace, advance sustainable development, uphold rights, and deliver dignity. The purpose inscribed in the Charter and the promise UN 86 to deliver. Thank you very much. Shukran jazilan.